one idea that's very common in our culture is that poverty is caused by lack of money, and that's a really stupid idea, because money is very difficult to handle. I had clients who were, you know, drug addicts, and the worst possible thing that could happen to them was that they got some money. They're just done. First of all, you know, they were hanging around with people who were a little on the sociopathic side, and so especially if they weren't that bright and couldn't defend themselves very well, as soon as they got money, well, it was off to the bar with all the friends. And you know, one guy I remember in particular, you know, every time he got his disability check, he was gone for 5 days. You usually found him in a ditch, you know, because he'd just go to the bar, spend every cent he had on alcohol and cocaine, and wake up in a ditch, 3/4 dead, eventually completely dead. And you know, then he was ashamed and horrified and repentant, and he'd straighten himself out again, and then that was all well and good until, as long as he was broke, until the next check showed up, and then bang, the same thing. So you know, it's not like money is necessarily a good for everyone. It's hard to manage money. It's really easy for it to disappear. I mean, elderly people have a hell of a time now because, you know, crooks are contacting them on the internet non-stop, and so just giving people money is like, it's like pouring water in their hands. It's not that helpful, not necessarily that helpful. And then of course contributors to poverty are, well, it's not so good to have a low IQ. You know, people don't like the idea of IQ because it seems so arbitrary. You know, you have a high IQ, well, it's not like you deserve it exactly. You're set up that way pretty much right from the beginning. It's very, 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 very stable. You can make a high IQ person stupider by, you know, not educating them up to the level of their possibility, but taking someone who has a low IQ and trying to raise that, it's like, if you can figure out how to do that, well, you know, it's Nobel Prize time for you, because people have tried that a lot, and our society is increasingly sophisticated, so it's by no means obvious. You know, the liberals think, well, this society is unfair because there's unemployment, and the conservatives think, well, there's a job for everyone, but none of them think, well, there are massive, massive, massive differences in people's ability, far greater than anyone realizes, and that poses a structural problem. I had a client, and I got him a volunteer job, which is way harder than you think. You need a police check, for example. Like, it's harder to get a volunteer job than a real job. But we got him in a volunteer job, and he had to fold pieces of paper, letters. He worked at a charity. He had to fold pieces of paper in 3 so that he could put them inside envelopes. And then the letters, which were in a pile, had to be matched with the proper envelopes, which were also in a pile. But some of them were French and some of them were English, so the French ones had to be matched carefully to the French envelopes. And then if, you know, if there was one envelope out of order, well, then he had to figure out whether it was the papers that were out of order or the letters that were out of order. And then some of the letters had photographs attached to them, and you weren't supposed to bend the photographs, but they weren't always in the same place, so that meant you had to figure out how to fold the paper in 3 a bunch of different ways without creasing the photograph. And then the other thing is, and I never realized how difficult it is to put a piece of paper in an envelope till I watched someone who couldn't do it, and he probably had an IQ of about 80. You know, if you met him on the street, you wouldn't think anything different of him. He was a normal looking guy